This is Ask Joe number 210. I'm back, baby. Hello. I can't believe I'm back. Wow. It has been, I don't even know. Somebody in the chat tell me how long it's been since the last episode, because I'm terribly, not sorry. I'm glad I did it. It was good. But I've missed you, and I've missed this connection time. Whether you listen to the podcast or you watch the video on YouTube, or if you're one of the few brave souls who actually show up live for the stream, I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad you're a part of this, whether you do one episode or all the episodes. I'm super glad you're here. So thank you for being a part of Ask Joe. So I took, as is probably obvious, I took a couple months off just to kind of regroup. I felt like I was doing too much. You may remember Gilder Cam, which became a daily vlog thing that just burned me out. And I had to figure out I'm very much an all or nothing thing. So I kind of went on vacation over the summer and said, you know what, let me just strip back and just do minimal stuff for a little bit. My face is shiny, you're right, Tiki. And then kind of work my way back to figure out what I can sustain long term. And daily Gilder Cam just wasn't in the cards. So you may have read the email I wrote about that. But we will go back to doing Ask Joe on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Central like we used to do. It's a good time for most folks in the world. But you remember those tracking sessions that I do over at Steve Peffer's place where we record people's songs for them? I'm having two of those. So tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, 2 back-to-back full-day sessions. So I couldn't do this in the middle of that, so I'm doing it today on Monday, and then we'll be back into regular Tuesday routine next week. But I see so many familiar faces here in the chat. If you can make a chance to make it a point to be here, maybe on your lunch break or however that works out. It's super a lot of fun. And obviously you can get your questions in and answered and then hang out with cool people like, Steve Rossbotham's here, Johnny Lipsham's here, Mark Sears is here, Tiki's here, Wes Deloach is here, man, we just got Pete Musker, tons of people are here. So thank you all for being here and thanks for listening. I don't want to talk too much because I just want to get into your questions because I've got to be out of here shortly. As you can see, we are in the throes of moving. This episode is brought to you by Home Depot. Not really. But yeah, so I've got all my guitars are over there packed up. My keyboard's behind me packed up. My shelves are all empty. I've got it. It's going to be insane. But it should be fun because I'm going to set up a new studio at a new place and I will be documenting all that and we'll be talking about it a lot here on the podcast, I am sure. So let's do this. Let me just say thank you for being here. Get your questions ready. I want to answer as many of those as I can. I also want to test out this new transition music I'm using from my latest EP. By the way, I still owe you one more EP this year. But it gives me a little more time before I do the boom. Remember the boom? Some people said the boom scared them. And I don't want to be in the business of scaring people. So it's going to be like this. Boom. Okay, that was fairly lame. But you get the idea. So, bring your questions. I've got a couple of questions that people have emailed to me. When I sent out the announcement email this morning, that fade out needs to be longer. I'm going to fix that in future episodes. But so I'm going to go to a couple of these, and then if you're here in the live chat, obviously I want to hear your questions as well. I can go for a decent amount of time, but I've got stuff to get to in a little bit. It's just busy. Moving is a insanely busy process, and I don't know why we do it to ourselves. But let's get on this thing. Oh, also my SM7 is busted. It's not busted, it's just got a hum, and I got to get that fixed. So we're rocking the AKG D5 handheld mic. It's actually a really great mic. We with our new church plant, which you may have seen in the latest Gilder Cam, we got 4 of these for vocals. I really like them. They're cool. I don't dislike Shure. These are cool too. All right. So Michael Hawkins emailed in and said, when recording vocals, are you strictly in the box or do you go through compression and EQ into the computer? That's a good question. I use, which camera am I using? This one? Yes. So hang on, let me take this down. if you look at the over here in my rack over here, this is the this black one on top is the PreSonus ADL 700, which I've realized they don't make anymore. Thanks, Johnny. And this is the ADL 600, and then the Eureka. So this one right here is the one I use mainly for vocals. It's a preamp, compressor, and an EQ. And I will use, sorry, hang on, let me put you back where you go. Get back up there. And I will use the EQ and compression when I'm doing vocals. I don't use a ton because I've made that mistake. You've heard me talk about making that mistake before of doing too much stuff on the way in, but I will do it some. Like if there's a annoying frequency in my voice that I know I'm going to EQ later, I'll EQ it there. Or if I'm using a dynamic mic and it's kind of dull sounding and I want some brightness, the high frequency EQ on that thing sounds nice. You can boost it all the way and it doesn't sound crazy and harsh because it's just a nice EQ. So I will do some of that, Michael. I don't do it all the time. And there's certainly nothing wrong with just doing nothing on the way in and just using plugins. That's totally fine too. Because I've done compression on there with a snare drum. You heard the story. I ruined it because I did too much. Gabriel Viegas from Brazil, who's a Dueling Mixes member as well, says, what's a good, effective way to pitch and land clients for mixing? What has helped you the most? So this is interesting, and I don't know if this is an applicable... This microphone's got a shadow on my face. I don't know if this is an applicable? How do you say that? Applicable or applicable? I don't know if this applies to you, but ironically, I got a lot of client work once I had established Home Studio Corner. The idea was just to make it its own thing, and I never expected anyone to want to hire me over the internet to like mix their songs, but that's happened a lot. I was looking through, I've got a Dropbox folder with whenever I do client work, it all goes into my client's Dropbox folder. Then each client gets their own folder within that folder, and the name of the folder is just their name. And I was looking through that the other day, and there were so many names of people I'd worked with over the last 10 years that a lot of them I'd forgotten. I'd look in the folder like, okay, I did a mix for them or something like that. And most of those, the ones I don't know their names, are usually the ones that hired me off from Home Studio Corner. They watched a few podcasts, they like what I'm doing, they listen to my music, and they'd hire me to mix something. So I'm not saying you have to start a Home Studio Corner, but some sort of, especially if you're looking to expand your horizons, it's just normal, like everyday life. How do you get hired to be a guitar player? You be good at guitar, and then you put yourself in positions to meet people who need guitar players, right? It's not super rocket science. But one thing kind of unique that's worked for me is having this presence online has allowed me to work with people all over the country, all over the world, who I probably wouldn't have worked with otherwise. And then there's just the normal, there's friends in Nashville that I meet, or friends of friends that we work together too. But yeah, I think having just figuring out a way to create value and also how to demonstrate that value, because you could be the most amazing mix engineer in the world, but if no one knows about you because you never actually share your work with the world, and you never put it out there, then that's a problem. There's people who say, any business, no matter what you do for a living, you should be creating some kind of content, whether that's just really keeping up with your Instagram feed and really connecting with people there, or Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and just demonstrating, hey, this is what I do in a way that's entertaining and valuable and interesting. It can only help. So it's kind of a very specific answer to a very kind of broad question, but that's one thing that I would suggest if it works for you. Do you think it's doable to work mainly for clients in other countries? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes more work. The easier jobs are the ones where you meet people, but I work with a lot of people that I've got some good friends who I've met through Home Studio Corner. Graham Cochran, my buddy Kevin Blaine. These are like good friends, like friends that I would call in an emergency, or like those kind of friends that I met on the internet. There's internet dating, then there's internet friend finding. That sounds weird. I shouldn't say that. What's a good way to tune a home studio mixing room, not using measuring mics? I'm not the right guy to ask that. I don't do a good job of that. Put up some treatment, learn your room, then just do a lot of work in there, and you'll eventually get good sounds. I know that's overly simplified, and people like Carl Tatz are probably rolling their eyes if they ever hear me say that. But you see these big mixing rooms, and it's covered in racks of gear. That room can't sound that great. But they'd rather have the nice gear than the perfectly treated room. I could be wrong. Maybe those rooms are perfectly treated to compensate for all that. I don't know. But anyway, hey, thanks for everybody who's here on the stream, by the way. We got a lot of people showing up. I should take 3 months off more often and then tell you about it, and then you all show up. That's cool. I'm kidding. I won't do that, I don't think. This is from Jose Costa. We got a lot of folks with Hispanic-sounding names asking today. My question's about pre-production. How do you choose the right BPM for a song? Any tips and tricks? So this is great. Really practical example. A lot of people will start playing the intro of the song, and they'll tap in the tempo and be like, yeah, that sounds good, and then they go. Problem is, Brian, I can't talk right now. I'm on a podcast. The problem is, a lot of people tend to, like I've done this when I'm leading a song, like playing a song live, I'll start it wrong. And once I start singing, or especially once I get to the chorus, I'll realize, ooh, I'm playing this too fast, and I'll adjust. Well, if there's a click, you can't do that, right? And if you just start recording everything, you may not know, because typical process goes record all the instruments and then record a vocal. You may not know until the singer starts singing that you recorded it too loud or too fast or too slow, which is a big time bummer, and you can't really fix it after the fact. So when you're setting the tempo, first thing is take plenty of time to do it. Don't just rush through it, because it's kind of a super important thing. Secondly, set the tempo by having them play and sing the chorus. That's the most important part of the song. Make sure the singer is comfortable. Make sure the guitar player that feels right. Set your tempo based on that, and then go back and record the intro. That's the way you do it. Wes Deloach is here on the live thing. Wes and I might be making music together one of these days. I'm excited that that's even an option. He says, are you worried about having to learn and get used to a new studio room? Absolutely. It's a bigger room. Every room I end up in doesn't have a super ideal layout for like treatment. It's either functional or it's the better layout for sound. And I usually pick function over sound, which is probably bad. I don't have tons of treatment. I imagine my big gobos are going to go to a lot of use, probably putting them to the left and right of my mix position. I may try to hang some clouds overhead. I've been needing to do that for a long time, and just try to make the mix position pretty sterile and dry, and just kind of go from there. But yeah, it's going to take learning, but to me, that's exciting, because I think, okay, like I've got another EP. I'm supposed to release 4 EPs this year. I've done 3. I was planning to have one released on December 1st, but with all this moving, that's just not possible without going to someone else's studio, and then that feels weird not to do it in my studio, because it's home studio corner. And I did the last one at someone else's studio, so I'm thinking about waiting until I'm moved in and do that EP in the new studio, because I firmly believe the only way to learn how to do any of this stuff is to do it. Like, to actually, if you hear something from me that you really like on recording drums, then go record drums. Not like a test session, like record drums for a project and finish the project and then move on to the next one. That's the best way to learn. Why am I releasing 4 EPs this year? One of those reasons is because I'm going to be 4 times, well, not 4 times, but I'm going to be that much better by the end of it, because doing that whole process 4 times, it just makes you better. Now, you have to learn and know technique and, avoid major pitfalls, all that, blah, 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 blah. But you get the idea. By repetition and just doing this stuff is how you get better. So I'm excited to do projects. I've got a session booked for the new studio on November, like the last 2 days of November. I will have been moved in and set up for a couple of days by the time they show up to do the session. We're just going to make it work. We'll probably make it look ugly, put a bunch of gobos around if we need to. It's going to be fine. You just got to dive in, freak yourself out, and then you'll be fine. Brandon says, any tips for folks recording to click tracks for the first time, working with some musicians who have a hard time playing a long segment of guitar perfectly to a click? Well, first of all, don't aim for perfect, just aim for good. And secondly, using loops can be a big way to help them. Playing along to the is not super, unless you've been doing it for a long time and that feels musical to you. If it doesn't, then you're going to have a hard time. So instead, give them some sort of a loop. Really simple loop, even if it's just boom, got, boom, got, boom. Just real simple, so it doesn't affect the groove, or put together a loop or find a loop that fits that groove, or whatever the groove of the song, and have them play along to that. That can feel a lot better. If it's a drummer, well, that's a problem. If the drummer can't play to a loop, Tiki, saw your question, Mr. Question Repeater. He says, how do you push through depression and get work done whenever you're depressed? I saw you emailed this question or sent it on Facebook, and I thought about it, and I was thinking it'd be awesome to have a super cool 3-step process for how to deal with depression or anxiety and to get over it. And the truth is, sometimes I don't. A lot of times I don't. If I'm super just in that dark place, I don't just just say like a certain phrase to myself and all is well. You know what I mean? So with that said, sometimes just having a schedule and having deadlines really helps. If I know I've got to get this done and there's really no option to postpone it, the stuff that's set in stone, I'll just do. And a lot of times in doing the work, I start to get into it, especially if it's work I like doing music, mixing songs, stuff like that. If I let myself off the hook and don't have any sort of a tight deadline for anything, then I'm much more likely to blow things off. Which is one of the downsides of working for yourself and being self-employed or whatever. You set your own schedule, which is great, but then you can blow off your schedule because nobody's holding you accountable, which is not so great. I've also found that things like every day, I make a list of like 3 things I'm thankful for. It kind of shakes your brain loose from being, oh, woe is me, to, okay, things are pretty good. There are things that are bad. There are legitimate things to be upset about or sad about or whatever. But there's also a lot of really good things. So that plus just prayer, not just being all in my head, but talking it out. Those are some things. But there's no, as you imagine, there's no like super secret trick. Do these 3 things and you'll never be sad again. I wish that was the case, but it's not. And that's not real life. And it kind of it's like that song, from the EP Fighter, the song Fighter. If life is one big disappointment, maybe I'm doing it right. Dark though that may be, to me, it's strangely comforting because it's like, you know what? That was disappointing. That feels kind of like real life versus I'm living in some fantasy land where everything goes perfectly, or that's what I'm expecting to happen, and I'm constantly just blindsided when things don't happen the way I expect them to. There's somewhere in between. There's a level of being disappointed that things don't always work out, and there's a level of just accepting that that's reality and finding ways to be thankful in the midst of it. I don't know. Lidge Shaw's here. What's up, Lidge? I owe you a phone call. We're moving this week, so it's crazy, but I will get in touch with you. Johnny Lipsham's leaving. What up, Johnny? See ya. Do you miss Pro Tools at all? And did you transfer all your old projects from Pro Tools to Studio One? Do I miss Pro Tools? Sometimes. Pro Tools is great. I think Pro Tools is fabulous from a functional standpoint, especially when it comes to editing. I like how clean it is. Studio One is kind of like a dark submarine. Pro Tools is like a nice, clean, bright, whatever the opposite of a submarine is. So I like that. And when I go to other studios, we use Pro Tools a lot of times, so I still get to use it some. And I still remember the shortcuts and stuff like that. So I'm not an anti-Pro Tools guy. It's just Studio One won me over. You know what I mean? So that said, did I transfer all my old sessions? No. I think transferring your old sessions to your new DAW is a complete waste of time. If they're old sessions, they're already done. So like the first kind of full-length album I released, Out of Indiana, came out in 2010. Those sessions are all in Pro Tools. I have the session files somewhere, but no, I didn't transfer them over. That album's done and released. I really have no reason to ever go back and open those sessions again, unless it's some cool, creative new project or whatever. I do export all the multi-tracks for my songs when I'm done because, excuse me, if you're a mix practice member, you get the multi-tracks to every album I put out. So I export those for mixed practice members, also just so I have a copy of the raw tracks in case I need to get back to them for some reason, but I've mostly never needed to get back to them. Excuse me. Cough in the mic, Joe. That sounds great. I'm a big fan of once something is finished, it's finished. If you learn a cool new trick, don't go re-record your favorite song. Write a new song and use that new trick on that new song. That's how you get better. If you keep rehashing old material, like that Out of Indiana album, it's fine. I'm proud of it, but I've gotten so much better in so many ways since then that I would rather work on something new than go back and re-record that acoustic guitar part that's wrong, because I feel like everything I do now is incrementally better than what I did 10 years ago, which is the way it should be. Let's see. How do you compose and manage drum loops in Studio One? Martin, I would recommend go to my YouTube channel, Home Studio Corner, and look on the playlist section and look for the series called Songwriting Corner, and then look at the latest videos in there from my latest EP. So songs like Believe, Fighter, Running Around, which was the intro music to this podcast, and Listen. I wrote all of those with loops. I created loops, kind of a loop, sort of beatbox loop thing, and then wrote the song to them. And I did all that in those videos. Did the entire process on screen. So Those would be worth watching, so go check those out. How to best record a live choir performance. With choir, kind of with anything, you get it right at the source, blah, blah, blah. But usually less mics is better. If it's a huge, like 40-person choir is not huge, but it's pretty big, I would put 2 or 3 mics on the choir. But the more mics you put up, the more chances it's going to sound bad. So I would put probably 3 mics on there and then have them sing and then listen back. You can always put more mics and see what it sounds like. Maybe a couple of mics close and then like stereo mics on the other side of the room to just get a big sound of the room. To me, it's just a lot of trial and error. And if you go into a session not knowing what you're going to do, that's fine. You just set up mics and record and listen back, and that tells you what to do. It's really simple. It can be nerve-wracking and stressful, but it's not super complicated. What's the software and hardware routing when using Studio Live as an audio interface and attempting to use external hardware to already recorded tracks? Print the track, pipeline. You can use the pipeline app in Studio One. That's pretty cool. Or you can just run it out and print it in. I've done both. Most of the time, I just print it back in so that I've got it there. So, for example, if I'm running it through, like I've run stuff through my 11 rack, like to get a cool spring reverb sound, I don't want to have to leave that in that position every time I come to mix that song, where it has to be on that exact same setting for me to get that sound. That's how you'd have to do it. Once I find the sound I want, I just record it back into a new track, and now I've got it forever. I can rip that 11 rack can die, catch fire, and go away, and I still have the sound because I recorded it back in. To me, that's just easier. Are you using USB or AVB connection with your new Studio Live Series 3? USB. I don't know what AVB is. I should probably research it, but I just don't. I see there's so many questions coming through. I'm just kind of getting the ones that come up now. If you've asked a question I didn't get to it, if you want to repeat it, I give you permission to do that once. Excuse me. Joe, I'm wanting to record an acoustic guitar. Should I put a preamp out ahead of the PreSonus Studio Live, or are those preamps built in just as good? I've got external preamps that I use, and they're great. I use them almost exclusively and then go into the Studio Live unless I'm out of channels, and then I go in. The preamps on the Studio Live are fine. They're very clean, just pristine, kind of straightforward preamps. The ones I've got have more color to them, which I tend to like. But the ultimate answer is do both and see which one you like better. If you actually like the Studio Live preamps better, that's your answer. Because it depends on if you got like a super cheap tube pre, it may not sound as good as the Studio Live, or maybe not for acoustic guitar. It's all trial and error. You'll get tired. Steven, I know you're new to the home studio crowd, new VIP member. I know you went through all the Gilder cams. I say a lot of the same stuff, and a lot of it revolves around getting it right at the source and trying things. So if I could summarize myself, that might be it. Chris says, tracking kick drum. Do I need a mic with a frequency response down to 20 and 30 hertz? Wire mini kick mics, 50 hertz and above. Have you ever listened to 20 and 30 hertz? You can barely hear it. So unless you're doing, I don't think it's important. I usually a lot of times I'll roll off everything below 30 or 40 hertz because there's just rumble that doesn't help the sound. The meat of the kick drum is like 50 to 60-ish hertz, and then around 100, 120 hertz is more of like that punch. So yeah, I think when you start asking questions that are really specific and like mic response, I start to kind of glaze over because that never matters. No, I never look at the graph. Like I bought a bunch of mics for this new church plant, and in the documentation they've all got the graphs of how the microphone works. I never look at that. I just listen to it. So if all the kick drum mics are rolling off 50 hertz but they sound amazing, I don't ask questions. I just use them. I get the curiosity. I don't have a better answer than they must still work and sound good. And just because we can humanly hear down to 20 hertz doesn't mean our kick drums need to have 20 hertz in them, because most of our speakers don't reproduce 20 hertz. These big suckers I've got in my room, I think they go down to 37 hertz. So 30 hertz not coming out, just not physically possible. So, and that's the case with most systems until you get into big old subwoofers. What's an easy way to record left and right? What? Sorry, Noah. Joe, I'm recording left and right tape out from a mixer. I set one of the mics all the way left and the other all the way to the right. I can hear the mics in the correct ear in both the mixer monitor and the interface monitor, but my DAW isn't recording left and right. It sets everything to center. Sorry, Noah. I can't really troubleshoot specific like gear problems. That sounds like you probably just don't have it set up right. I'm not sure what you're plugging those into. I don't know, man. Sorry, it sounds frustrating, but I don't know. Truckee says, I've got a country rock song I wrote, Tim Horsley on drums. I love that. With 3-part harmonies. Would you recommend tracking each vocal twice and blend it later? How would you set up the pans for these? It depends. I really would have to listen to it. If I usually I would go with, if it's 3-part harmonies, first of all, don't overdo it. Don't have 3-part harmonies everywhere in the song. That gets old. Use them in good spots. But usually for country and country rock, it's usually just one of each. So the lead vocal and then the 2 harmonies, and then I'll pan those just a little bit left and right. Next month's song at Dueling Mixes has that, and I panned them just a little bit. If you want to double them and see what it sounds like, there's nothing stopping you. Then at that point, it's just whatever you prefer. I wouldn't put them super hard left and right, though, in most cases. If they're doubled, that might work, but if it's regular harmonies, I like to keep them tight in with the lead vocal. That works pretty well. Do you prefer recording in the room with a band or being in a more control room separate from the source you are going to record? Depends on. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Tim. Recording vocals, or I don't know. Andrew says, what's your best time management tip for someone who with a busy day job trying to start a home studio business on his nights and weekends? Andrew, great question. I think I probably don't offer a lot of advice in that category, and that's a shame. So best advice, just in general for time management, is you got to schedule stuff and have deadlines. It's super, super simple. But for me, even now, like I have my days. I start a week, and some weeks it's completely blank, and I can decide what I'm going to do that week. And it's amazing. At the same time, you have to make decisions, and you have to choose what you're going to do, and there's a lot to choose from, so that can be hard to make those decisions. I know, it's a fun, nice problem to have. But for me, the times when I'm most productive and I get the most done and make the most traction towards the things that I want to do are the times where I'm fairly scheduled and I've got deadlines. I know that I've got to get this thing done by Thursday, and that forces me to behave differently Monday through Wednesday when I know that Thursday that's happening, and I know once that's done, I know what the next project is that I've got to work on. So if I blow off the Thursday deadline, it means I'm pushing back that next project, and there's a good chance that next project is something I want to do. So a part of it is just being able to guesstimate how much time it's going to take you to do stuff, but then also once you guess that, set a deadline and try your best to stick to it. You're not going to be perfect, and life happens. So I'm certainly far from perfect at this, but when I'm kind of locked in and in the zone and feeling the most productive, that's usually what's happening. Pete says, when editing a vocal level by writing a volume envelope, do you do it with the rest of the mix playing? Yeah, I do. Occasionally I'll go in and listen. If it's like one word, I just want to make sure it's the same volume. I'll solo it. But for the most part, when I'm trying to do vocal automation, I'm trying to get the vocal to sit on top of the mix in just that little pocket. You can't do that if you can't hear the mix. So yeah, I'm always listening. I'm almost always doing stuff in context of the mix because that's all that matters. I was showing, it's either in this month's Dueling Mixes or next month, I soloed my solo snare drum, and it sounds awful by itself. But in the mix with the overheads and the rooms and everything else, it sounds really great. If you had forced me to sit there and solo on the snare drum until it sounded like what you want it to sound like, that might be cool, but then in the mix, it might not have worked. I really don't care. And those are the kind of questions I get sometimes. They'll say, hey, when I solo my snare, it sounds awful, but in my mix, it sounds good. And I'm scratching my head saying, what's the problem? It sounds good in the mix. Why are you stalling? Get back to work. Paul says, is it worth the time to mix in mono or just try the mix on different systems? I go back and forth on the mono thing. I kind of have moved away from it because I enjoy stereo, and that's the way I always listen to it. But it is worth it to just, at least as an experiment and a learning process. If your mixes aren't translating, then I would go back to mono on your system because it's going to help you hear the problems a little bit better. To me, I would almost say mono / smaller, crappier speaker. Like these I hate these because they show me a lot of flaws in my mix, and if the kick drum's not, if I can't hear the kick drum on that, or if everything sounds too harsh on that, then I know, okay, I've got some more work to do. To me, that's more helpful than the mono thing, but mono is still pretty helpful as well. All right, let me flip back over and see if I had any other email questions. I think I might have gotten them all. I think I did. I think that's it. You know what? All right, I got time for like one more question. Let me, if you got a burning question I haven't answered, you can ask that now, or I'm gonna call it because I've got to get to this other thing I got to do. But I will wait just another moment for any other questions to come through on the chat, unless I might have missed something. Rick says, "Don't forget to like and subscribe." Yeah, be sure to like this video, this stream, however you're doing this, and subscribe and sign up for my email newsletter because that's where I kind of keep you in the loop on that. Here's one I missed from earlier from OK Parker. Says, what happens when your sales pitch is good, you have great contacts, several years of hands-on experience, work coming my way, but don't have a full studio setup? I've been turning down work. That's a great question. So here's the thing. You don't have to have everything in your studio to be able to do the things you want to do. For example, I've talked about this before. I've been booking these sessions where we track a full band for clients, and we do them pretty quickly, and we get them all done. We have amazing musicians. My studio's not set up to record 5 musicians at the same time, but my buddy Steve's studio is. So I book his place, and we work that into the pricing so that it works out. I can pay all the musicians, I can pay Steve for his studio time, and then ultimately everybody wins. I don't have to go out and spend another $30,000 to set up my studio for that. I use his system, and it works well. All right, that's all for today. I'll see you next Tuesday, 1 o'clock. Bye-bye.